Guys, welcome back for another episode of Barrel Age Faith. I've got my good friend David Baylor back on the show. Great to have you on, David.
Yeah, it's good to be here again.
You've been busy. One of the things I got to update everybody on is I've got a couple icons back here now that David has done through his studio and ministry. Gregorian icons, right? Did I say that right?
Gregorio, so like just the
Oh,
Greek version of Gregory. My saint
yes.
is Saint Gregory Palamas. So
Wonderful, wonderful. So I've got to show, you can see the one of St. George, and then right behind me is also St. Olga of Alaska, which you painted for my goddaughter, which is wonderful. So I wanted to make sure I had a second copy since our families are now tied together through the amazing Saint Olga.
Yeah, and I also have the original of the. I should have just like brought it and had it here in the studio with me. The original of the Saint George icon that you have behind you. I suppose if somebody would really want that, I would consider selling it to them.
Yeah, and I can even show a little bit of a close up because it's a little farther away. There's St. George. I love this icon, David. You want to interpret the symbolic meaning in 2 seconds?
I mean, I guess
Defeating death. Defeating sin.
it's a fairly straightforward icon. I mean,
Right.
Saint George slaying the dragon, and we could get into the whole story of Saint George and the dragon, and I guess the symbolic meaning of that and everything. But
Yeah. Yeah. Our dragon's real.
yes. The question is, in what way?
That's right. That's right. Well, guys, I want to show those icons to you. I'll have a link below on a link to all of his icons that you guys can check out. And we were just joyous to have him do this for our goddaughter, and loved that you did Saint Olga.
Yeah,
Wonderful, wonderful saint.
and of course, if you're watching this on my channel, then the links are all in the description of all my videos, so you can see that. And of course, if you're watching this on my channel and some strange coincidence you're not subscribed to Barrel Age Faith, then go ahead and do that.
We've become good friends. That we first met in person, I think, at St. George in Fishers, where I attend, and we in some different Pan-Orthodox Vespers as well.
Yeah. St. George and Fishers, it's kind of like my second home. So
it's a great place.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful place. And so so today we're going to be talking about the role of beauty in the Orthodox Church. Right before we get to that topic, though, I do want to ask, how did your trip go to the Orthodox Arts Festival? What was that experience like?
It was a very it was very good. It was a very fun, very rewarding experience. You know, a huge Orthodox community there in Dallas. I mean, it's a very large city. I guess I knew it was big, but you don't quite have a concept. It's like similar to Chicago, I guess, is how I understand it. Like similar in size to Chicago, and very big Orthodox community. It was great to be at St. Constantine and Helen Antiochian Church is where the festival was, and then we also went to St. Seraphim Cathedral in downtown Dallas for liturgy on Sunday morning. That's the OCA Cathedral, and that's actually where Deacon Seraphim Roland serves at that cathedral. So I got to hear him. I guess sing the liturgy, chant the liturgy, or his parts in it anyway. So that was fun as well. Those are both beautiful churches. I especially enjoyed hearing the Sons of Antioch, the Byzantine ensemble, perform, and they served the liturgy as well. I guess served isn't the proper term, but they chanted the liturgy. That's what I'm looking for. They chanted the liturgy on Saturdays. That would have been the Saturday of Souls. So that was great, a great experience as well. And then of course, just being there, hearing the storytellers, hearing people like Dr. Martin Shaw and Deacon Seraphim Roland telling stories as much as we were able to, because I mean we were also there as vendors, so we weren't able to hear everybody's thing, and that would have been nice, but well, we were able to hear the connections, seeing all of the different Orthodox artists, all of that. It's just a wonderful experience, and definitely something I'd recommend to people. If you're able to go next year, you should definitely consider it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go. I want to go to everything Orthodox, but with 7 children, it's like I can only pick one maybe conference a year to
Mhm.
go to. So maybe one year I'll go there. I have many festivals that I want to go to. I just had Dr. Cyril Jenkins on, and I was being recruited to Doxamuth, the sort of the Middle Earth Lord of the Rings conference for the
Yeah,
Orthodox world. May go
yeah.
to
I
that.
was I was trying to kind of put a bug in some people's ears about the symbolic world summit, and I suggested to them, Indianapolis would be a great place for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that just kind of is in general, like, because it also happens to be true. Like for other Orthodox people looking for a great place to hold an event, like consider Indianapolis. There's a big active pan Orthodox community in central Indiana and lots of great places. And it's a
It would be a great. I mean,
throw in
it's
my little
already.
pitch. I want to see more Orthodox things going on in Indianapolis. So
Well, there we go, David. It's our goal, I guess, because I mean, it's already become very well established for events around the country because it's
yeah,
a very
right.
walkable city, and we do have a lot of
Yeah,
Orthodox churches, so it would be
very
pretty.
easy to very easy
Mhm.
to get around. Pretty cheap place to do things as far as a large city goes. So
Yeah, no doubt.
that's
So
my
I was
pitch.
going to ask you, you got to meet, run into, and hear Martin Shaw speak because I actually interviewed him right after he was at the Orthodox
Yeah.
Arts Festival too.
Yeah, it's always very enjoyable to hear his storytelling. He's just a great storyteller, and maybe someday we could aspire to be half as good as he is at telling stories. I think you and I both have the sensibility that like it's through the telling of stories and through the engagement with stories that we really learn. Um, I think we both engage in like philosophy and theology and apologetics to a certain degree, but always kind of have the frustration that it's like, well, this really isn't the best way to communicate. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
storytelling,
so true.
yeah,
I'm
storytelling is just such a great way to, I don't know, because there's like a lot of truths that you just really can't define. You really can't say them directly. And whenever you try, you always find that you fall short of what you're trying to accomplish, or you say what you think is like, "Oh, this is the perfect explanation of what I'm trying to get at," and then the people you are telling it to just like walk away having heard something completely different.
yeah.
But stories work in a totally different way. And art in general works in a totally different way. And truth. We have this idea as Orthodox truth and beauty are kind of the same thing.
Well, they are. One example that I once heard that was so helpful for me, and it was contrasting how the fathers do theology versus the later scholastics. Um, you know, scholastic theology, particularly when it gets really crazy and hyper, it's picking apart a living organism like on a table, like
Yeah.
dissecting a frog. And I mean, there is something that you learn, right? You learn the parts of a frog because its guts are spilled out on the table. You don't learn anything about the beauty of a frog or the beauty of a pond and how that frog operates in its ecosystem.
Hmm.
And that's the way that the fathers do theology. They're doing theology where they're seeing everything living and interacting. And so there's a sense of beauty and there's a sense of wonder. And so you can never dissect the narrative, the beautiful story of how this living thing operates. And so that's how the church is.
Yeah.
You can't dissect the church. It also allows for mystery to live within a story, whereas you can't. If you're just trying to dissect something, you're not going to be able to find the mystery because you can't
Yeah.
figure it out.
Right. Yeah, and it's like I don't want to go too far down this rabbit trail, but it's like a good example for me of that is always this idea of assurance of salvation, and we can reduce this to like a theoretical idea. You know, how is it that you define salvation such that you can convince yourself rationally that you have an assurance? But then I step back and examine it. It's like, what does that actually mean for me in real life, in real experience? Like I still have anxiety. I still question myself. I still wonder if I've made it. It just like I said, I don't want to go too far that down that rabbit trail. Just use that as an illustration of the just how there's a disconnect between theory and reality a lot of times.
St. Paul does that though. He does exactly what you're saying in the scriptures. You
Mm,
know, you can do systematic theology all day, but in the end, Paul says, I want to finish the race.
right.
And he's not, he talks about how he could still be disqualified.
Yeah.
He uses the language of a shipwreck. He doesn't want to shipwreck his faith. So there are all these, possible disasters uh, uh, if we don't remain in Christ. And so that's St. Paul's theology. And so that's a good example of him using narrative, using story, like metaphors and analogies to talk about these things. So
Yep.
so anyways, I did, yeah, interview Martin Shaw. Did he talk about this book when you were there? I'm assuming that he was.
Um, I mean, he had the book there, and he did like signings, book signing
Mhm.
like that, and I think maybe he addressed some in his Q&A, but mostly it was just like, he showed up and it's like, I'm gonna tell a story, but I won't know what story until I start telling
Yeah.
it. If you've ever been around him, that's kind of how he does things. It's just, kind of like whatever you could say the spirit of the moment brings out is what comes out.
Right. He just knows thousands and thousands of stories. And he told me when I was interviewing him, hey, look, like when I don't really talk about the book. I just talk about stories. And he's such
Yeah.
an authentic person. It's funny to me that he's becoming a New York Times bestseller with his book. But like his own way of going about himself is against that kind of whole world.
Yeah.
Like he's not the kind of person with, shiny teeth and the suit and like here's 7 steps to make your life better. Uh, but yet his book's doing really well and I think it's a
Yeah.
pretty exciting thing.
Yeah, that's the kind of book that we should hope does well.
Exactly.
And he's the kind of author that we should hope people want to hear his approach to stories. It's just such a breath of fresh air in this world of like deconstructing everything, like the nihilism that exists in so many authors' worldviews. And you have somebody like Dr. Shaw who comes along as a counterpart to that. It's like, no, like there's goodness and beauty in creation, and that's something we can engage with.
Yeah, that's right. And so at the Orthodox Art Festival, you also went down with Brian Rollridge, who I interviewed. You
Yeah.
you were in the studio for on his iconography ministry. What was it like going down with Brian down to the Orthodox Arts Festival?
I mean, I work with Brian a lot, so I guess it was just more of being around being around, I guess, my friend and teacher. I'm an apprentice iconographer under Brian. He's my teacher. Um, so I don't know. I guess I don't quite know how to answer that beyond that. Just
No, like he's just your friend. That's a great
yeah,
question.
just a road trip. Two friends making a road trip. I mean, we drove we drove from Indiana to Dallas together, so that was kind of an adventure. Um,
No, I think I was saying it because I was just jealous. Like I wish
yeah,
I had been in the car going down with you guys.
maybe next
You
year
guys are
we'll
great people to just to be around.
maybe next year we'll let you tag along. I don't know where we'll put you, but
Right. You just
strap you to the ceiling or something.
I'm a small guy, you can just throw me anywhere.
Stick you in a box.
Yeah. It's funny because in this interview, I'm taller than you, but in real life, I'm not even
Yeah,
close
right.
to being taller than you.
That's true.
Yeah.
I
It's
kinda
okay.
look
Jonathan Pajot is
small.
really Pajot's shorter than me too.
Yeah,
Pajot and, Deacon Seraphim Roland came out of the elevator, and Deacon Seraphim's a giant, and Pajot is shorter than me maybe. So it was
yeah,
kind of funny contrast.
yeah, Deacon Seraphim is like, he's not, an excessively tall person, but he's a tall person, but is just has a large presence.
Yes. That's right. That's right. He kinda like, when he's around, it's kinda like, let's talk. Let's hear what he has to say."
Mhm.
So you went to the Orthodox Art Festival. You've come back. You're doing iconography. Number of different things going on in your life. Anything else you want to update us? What's going on with you before we jump into our
Um,
topic?
I mean, I guess I don't know how personal to get with that. There's a lot of things going on personally, but, we could get into that, like, I'm
Yeah,
getting married, for example.
there
That's
we
that's
go. Congratulations. That's
um
awesome. That's amazing. I've told you in person, but now we're announcing it live, so that's
Yeah,
pretty exciting.
you're announcing. This
Pretty
isn't the
exciting.
first live announcement, so
Okay,
has
that's
dropped
great.
on my channel. So no.
Great. That's great. So today we're going to be talking about a very fun topic, like why does beauty matter in Orthodox Christianity? And yeah, real quick book reference. If you're interested in this topic, I mean, this is like the tome of all books on this topic, The Ethics of Beauty by Dr.
Mhm.
Timothy Patistas. I've actually had him on the show. There we go. And this has been published by St. Nicholas Press, 800 pages. It's basically like buying 4 books at once. But anybody who digs into this eventually says, "Oh wow, this is like the Orthodox worldview, and a beautiful presentation of it." So always
Yeah.
have to kind of plug this book whenever I'm talking about beauty. But why does beauty matter, David?
Well, you're mentioning your book that you think comes to you that comes to mind for you, and for me, what comes to mind is just the famous quote from Dostoevsky that beauty will save the world. Um, which I think, like every Orthodox, every Orthodox convert is very familiar with that quote. But it's very true. So, for example, we were talking about before the interview here. I was mentioned like my home parish. It's a small parish, and the building that we have, wasn't purpose built to be an Orthodox church. Wasn't purpose built to be a church at all. It's something that the small originally evangelical Orthodox community, it's something they could afford, something they could get, something they could use, and it works. Like, you know,
So your
you
church community was originally part of the Evangelical Orthodox Church, which was the movement that Father Peter Gilquist started before becoming canonical Orthodox,
yeah, correct.
right? Okay. People
Um,
recognize Father Peter Gilquist's name, so I just
yes,
wanted to connect the dots there real quick for
yeah,
people.
right,
Yeah.
right. And we were just talking about how the building that we have, and its particular, I guess, architecture, its particular design, sort of the flow of how you move through the building, the flow of the space when you're worshiping in it, when you're fellowshipping in it, and all of that. It really has a profound effect on the dynamics of the community. I had mentioned to you, just kind of reflecting on that and musing on that, how if if we were, by the grace of God, able to build or to expand our space and have something more, more purpose built, more carefully designed, more intentionally designed, like what kind of an impact would that have on the dynamics of our community, on the health of our parish? And it's something that you don't really think about it a whole lot. Most of us going through our daily lives, we don't think about things like that. But that's just an example. Like the architecture of our buildings, the architecture of our world really does have that kind of profound impact on the way we interact with the world, and the way we form as people and as communities. And so that's one small example of that. And I think that's something, you can take that and expand it outward into so many other things. So I guess what I'm trying to say with that is just that beauty really does matter, and we all recognize, maybe at this like subconscious level, the way in which it matters.
Yeah.
Because like what I'm trying to draw out there is just this idea that it shapes the way we interact with the world around us and with each other.
It's true, and I'll give you a quick little example. I have a friend, and he has a big farm, and he's in a big sort of rural community. There are not any Orthodox churches nearby. I think he maybe
Mhm.
drives hour and a half to go to a monastery with his family, and he's created like a kind of a I don't know if I haven't seen it in person, but he's told me about it. You know how you can build structures pretty easily now, or buy sheds that don't look like sheds, like they almost
Mhm.
kind of look like they could be like a little. You could make it into a little chapel pretty easily with those kind of higher end types of sheds. I don't know if that's exactly what he has, but something similar. And he's got almost kind of like a little Orthodox chapel on his property where it's a little bookstore. He's got books there. He's got icons. It's a place to pray, and I think his long term goal is to make it a beautiful place for his community to visit. And this is before there's even an Orthodox mission there.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. He's inviting. his community to see this aspect of beauty in a beautiful countryside, beautiful place, land.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so it doesn't just have to be like a, you know, a church.
there is this terrible idea that a lot of us have bought into in America in particular, just kind of utilitarianism, and that if something doesn't serve a practical function or something that doesn't bring economic prosperity to us, then it's useless. And I remember this, for example, when Indianapolis was wanting to build a new stadium for the Colts. And, a lot of people fussing about this, for example. It's like, oh, this is a waste of money and all of this. But it's like they wind up building this great big, like, really, like, architecturally, like, I like it. It's architecturally well done, the Lucas Oil Stadium.
Some people have actually said it follows a little bit of cathedral
Yeah,
style. Now, I'm not calling it a cathedral, but, you know, if you saw the RCA Dome before that, you know, like an ugly
yeah.
spaceship, and then you see the Lucas Oil Stadium, it's a humongous, beautiful upgrade, to
Yeah,
say.
right. But just reflecting on it now, because this was all happening when I was a child, and I don't quite understand these things. I just, you know, remember being around like conservative farming people who have like this very practical mindset, and then just reflecting on it now, like being in downtown Indianapolis and just thinking like the flow of this place is so impacted by the choices that they made. That's just like a very simple example, maybe not the best example. My brother John has often said, he lives in a small town, and like, what is it that defines the nature of this small town? It's a small town that, like, the town that exists now is like beside the ruin of the original town, basically. Like, people in small town central United States like know what I'm talking about. You have these small towns, and like the old heart of the town is dead and deserted, and there's like this basically new town that's grown up along the highway, and that's where everybody does everything now. And you go into the old part where all the old grocery stores are, and it's like sad and depressed and abandoned buildings that are like falling apart, and all of that. And the old timers reflect on the stories of when there was like a grocery store here or something like that.
Yeah, we definitely traded sort of a beautiful, organic, living urban communities. We traded that for suburban sprawl, basically.
Yeah, and then, like, what is
Yeah.
convenient? Like, convenience is what we value the most, and having a a gas station along the highway or a Dollar General on the highway is convenient, so that's what we prioritize. But his point he's brought out is how much would it change the dynamics of this community if somebody on the edge of town along the highway would build a great big beautiful Orthodox church? And,
Yeah,
like, even if the people in the community aren't going to that church, like, suddenly the identity of this place would become like, "Oh, that's the town that has that beautiful church."
exactly. Exactly. So I think we can jump maybe what we're talking about right now. This can even go to the end of our conversation, but I want to bring it back around to the center. And I think Dr. Timothy does a really good job with this. I'm going to read a little quote from his book on page 130. This is what he writes. Why is the church's most precious collection of texts about prayer called the Philokalia, which means love for the beautiful? It is because the Jesus prayer is focused first on loving Christ, who's first on loving Christ, who is the beautiful. And the careful focus on his name in the prayer is our chase and ardent arrows for Christ. In cultivating the prayer, we cultivate chastity before the beautiful. And this is the key line. And this is the first step in Orthodox Christian life, always and forever. When we talk about beauty, beautiful cities, beautiful churches, but we always have to go back first and foremost to the beautiful one that is Christ. Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly.
And if we it is kind of ironic if we forget the beautiful one, then something even if it looks beautiful can slowly become disfigured and ugly in a way, you know.
Yeah.
There's an yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like you see that happening with churches that were like formerly these beautiful, beautiful churches and how they've been disfigured. I mean, you were just kind of talking, but we don't have to go into the specific details because I don't want to get anybody in any trouble. But how, people with ignorant and misguided ideas, thinking they're pursuing something artistic, just disfigure beauty all the time. Like it's like we all know about that happening all over the place in our world right now, or it has been for decades. Um,
Yeah.
and just the tragedy and the loss that we all feel when that kind of thing happens, and the way it disfigures our lives when that kind of thing happens.
Yeah, when you forget the life of prayer, then you can attempt to make beauty and it might look kind of beautiful, but there's something off about it. I mean,
Mhm.
I hate to bring him up, but Rumpnick, who is this Catholic iconographer, if you will, he put stuff everywhere in the Catholic world, all over the place. He's been known, he's now been found out as an abuser, but
Mhm.
his icons were based upon Byzantine iconography and they were fragmented. Like the lines wouldn't meet up.
Yeah.
He would put these big black eyes. So instead of the eyes looking transfigured, they look like an abyss, if you will. And it's
Mhm.
very sad. I mean, Eastern, as a side note, Eastern Catholics who appreciate Orthodox iconography for the most part were always bothered by Rumpnick's work because they realized this was like a disfigurement of our tradition.
Well, and that's a good example of something, a principle that I kind of, well, I do believe that artistic expression really is an expression of inner realities. And when I look at something like that and I see like this disjointed art, I was like, oh, well, this is the product of a disjointed person. And like that in this case turns out to be true, very true. But like, what does that say about our culture and our society and the people in our society, the sort of art or the sort of anti-art that we're creating, the anti-beauty that we're creating, and like this kind of brutalism that we've favored for a long time, and this kind of disjointed postmodern. I'm not even going to call it art because it's not art. There's no beauty to it. It's like it's anti-beauty. Like that really is what it is. And what does that say about like our inner realities? What does it say about like it reflects the I don't know, the turmoil that is going on inside of us. And I don't know, I think that's a problem that arises kind of as a consequence of things like iconoclasm, that you don't realize the intimate connection between the icon, the image, and the sacred realities that they are, we would say that they are windows to.
Yes. I so we started with Christ and then of course Christ, if we look at this from a narrative perspective, a storied perspective, which is what we are kind of talking about in the beginning, then all of creation of course is made through Christ and creation itself is an icon of God. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, I love nature. I love the wilderness. It's beautiful. How do you how do you as an iconographer like how do you even approach the beauty of creation? How does this even relate to maybe even your own work? Because icons have trees and mountains sometimes.
Mhm.
There's definitely this relationship between a beautiful Orthodox church and creation itself.
Well, this is something me and Brian kind of joke back and forth about this because um, we have a little bit of different approach to how we formulate like the drawing that is the basis of our iconography. But I for example, I'm really interested in geometry as it was used historically. And I guess the relevance to your question is I I want my iconography, I want my work, whatever. Like this is true of more than just iconography. So I think this is also true, for example, of music, or this is how we should be conscious of this, like when we're putting together our parish's setting of the liturgy or something like that. Is there's like a kind of internal harmony and a sort of pattern that exists in creation and in reality that reflects like these higher order of things, like the celestial, the heavenly hierarchy. That's like the world is ordered in this hierarchical manner. And so I guess that's what comes to mind when you ask that question is like, well, I use this kind of geometrical principle when I'm designing things, when I'm drawing things. And honestly, I think good iconographers that aren't doing it deliberately are still doing it because it it's not something, if I'm doing it right, it's not something I'm artificially manufacturing. Rather, I'm trying to reflect reality. I'm trying to reflect what is the most true, what is the most real, what is the most beautiful. And you as an iconographer, if you're not using a compass and a straight edge to lay out the geometric order of your iconography like I do, like I think you're still pursuing the same thing, just with a different technique.
Interesting. I look at it from my background is not in iconography, but much more kind of in the biblical theology world.
Hmm.
But I love how that relates, of course, to like an Orthodox church or temple
Yeah.
in the sense of there is a hierarchy of space.
Yeah.
Well, originally in creation, when God made all things, there is a hierarchy of space because the tree of life is and Eden are related to a mountain, and the tree of life is also connected to the menorah and the temple and the holy of holies, right? Like there's it doesn't mean that all of creation wasn't created holy, but there was a hierarchy of holiness or sanctified space. And
Well,
so I
yeah.
love thinking this through. It's fun.
Yeah, so there's like, you could call them rules that we operate by when if we're building an Orthodox church, or if we're building I know, if I'm painting an icon or something like that, like there's rules that we follow. These things aren't just up to the whim of the architect or of the iconographer or something like that. But like, I use the word rule kind of with hesitation, because it's not like somebody has sat down and written out a book. And if somebody has sat down and written out a book, it's like, here's all the things that you have to do when you're painting an icon. It's like, well, that's wrong. It's not that kind of rule. That's not how that's not how these things work. Um, but you understand what I'm trying to say, though, is like there are principles ordering and governing these things, that if I am painting a good icon reflects those realities. It arises out of that tradition which has sought that reality, has sought the higher realities of things. And so whether it be church iconography, church music, the way in which the liturgy has developed over the history of the church, because it's, like the pattern of the liturgy has always been the same, but the way that we have expressed the liturgy and the specific hymns and prayers that we use today aren't what the apostles themselves used, as
Right.
just an example.
It's not frozen.
Right.
It's not rigid. There is a canonical tradition with
Yeah.
iconography.
Right.
Like
And
that
like
that you flow within this canonical tradition, and you can realize pretty quickly what is canonical and what is not.
yeah.
But again, a legalistic mindset can't quite grasp that either.
But this is something that really bugs me with like modern Roman Catholic Church architecture, is that it seems like they've kind of like thrown away a traditional understanding of the world, and they're building like what are to me like these monstrous postmodernist buildings that have like no reality to them. It's like they're trying to artificially construct some kind of symbolism, rather than recognizing that symbolism is a reality that reveals itself to you.
It's very much a minority camp in the Catholic world that
Mhm.
that are close to understanding it. The majority are not there yet. There's definitely, from my own background, there's definitely small little efforts, right?
Yeah.
And they generally really respect the Orthodox world, like these people. Um,
Mhm.
Hillary White would be a good example. She's got a Substack. She lives in Italy, deeply respects the Orthodox world, and she'll even kind of critique where the West begins to slowly get off with its
Yeah.
understanding of sacred art
Well,
used in prayer and worship. Yeah.
on the way back from Dallas, Brian and I, we stopped in St. Louis and visited the cathedral, the Catholic cathedral there, the Roman Catholic cathedral, which is just like a beautiful Romanesque cathedral. I don't know if you've ever been there.
No, I've only studied it online. It's like Romanesque and influenced by the East too.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure.
Um, but so it is this incredibly beautiful building, and it has this like these Romanesque and Byzantine style mosaics. I think they said it was the largest mosaic, like total mosaics in the world, until they built Saint Sava in Serbia. Like that
Interesting.
placed it as the largest. That's what they said. Or at least how I understood what they said. I might have misunderstood too. But it's stunning and it's beautiful. But then you get to this, like, the last section. I would assume anyway. It's like the last section of mosaics that were done in this certain part of the church, which is just like this modern, like a modern interpretation, and it's just like it's jarring with the rest. And I don't know that anybody could walk into the building. I'm sure there's somebody somewhere that, like, thinks like this is the best part. But to me, it's just like, no, this is wrong. This looks like like Brian's comment was like, this is like a cartoon or like a children's book.
Oh,
Um,
no.
but it's just, like, this is what happens. And, like, to me, like, I just bring that out as an illustration because it's, to me, it's like this is what happens when we have modern interpretations of icons or modern interpretations of church architecture or something like that. It's like a child playing with these things who, a child that has no understanding of what he's dealing with, and what he comes up with is like a child's effort. Um, but more important than that is just this idea that it's like we're trying to impose ourselves onto the world rather than what I said earlier of recognizing that symbolism is something revealed ultimately from heaven. Like, symbolism is something that comes down, true inspiration. And as an artist, I'm always conscious of that. Whether it be like painting an icon or writing a story or something like that. Like, I strive very hard to, I don't know, kind of remove myself from the equation. That it's not I'm not trying to express myself. I'm trying to express something that's real. And if I were a saint, if I were like fully, truly human instead of less than human as I am now, then maybe expressing myself would be virtuous. But me as a sinful person, like, self-expression is like, why would I want to express something that is less than what it well, than
Yeah.
what it should be? And instead, like, our art, our work, what it is that we are doing should be aiming for something higher than ourselves.
That's a very good point. It's like you don't wanna express our corrupted selves, but our transfigured selves, like what we will be in the resurrection, right? The resurrection of the dead, resurrection of the body.
Well,
You think of, Saint Seraphim of Sarov kind of glowing in the woods.
yeah, and even more important than that, I fundamentally view creation as a type of prayer. And to understand that, you have to understand, like, our orthodox sensibility of prayer isn't like this idea that we're going to bring our request to God and convince God to do something for us. Like, I kind of had that. I know it's a wrong understanding, and probably nobody thinks that's a correct understanding, but I kind of had that sensibility before I was orthodox. And recognizing the shortcoming of that sensibility is a big part of why I became orthodox. Um, but rather we view prayer as us being like approaching what is holy and being transformed by that contact with God. Um, and I view creation as fundamentally prayer in that sense, that what I'm really doing and this is, I think, a very ancient understanding of creation. You'll see this reflected. I mean, for example, in like the introduction to the Odyssey, where, Homer recognizes that what he's writing isn't coming from him, it's coming from the muses. That true goodness, true beauty comes down from above. And that's what I mean, that it's a sacred act, and it's an act of prayer, because it's me looking at what is good, at what is holy, what is true, what is beautiful, and hopefully being transformed by that contact.
Mhm. Yeah, so what you're saying is it's not a self-construct, which is,
Right.
like, obviously quite popular in postmodern thought and around our world, right? Morality is like, everything's a self-construct, if you're outside the world of the church. Uh, but prayer is actually reception. Like,
Yeah.
I'm receiving from God, becoming transformed by that, becoming truly who I'm supposed to be, like, our Lord gives Adam his breath.
Yeah.
And then Adam in praise, right, offers creation back up to God.
Yeah, and it's like the theology of Saint Irenaeus with, Christ coming to recapitulate our humanity, recapitulate the human nature in us for us. I don't know, I'm probably saying that poorly. Um, don't, don't please don't pile on me in the comment section if
No, no,
I
it's right.
phrased it poorly, but, um,
I mean,
we are
C.S. Lewis
good.
talks about that a lot. C.S. Lewis will basically build a lot of his fiction and writings on Saint Irenaeus and how
Yeah.
Christ is healing human nature. Like
Mhm.
he's like we're bent ones. He uses the
Yeah.
word bent ones a lot. Lewis does, and
Right,
he's
and
like straightening us back up.
we are good only in as much as we participate in the divine.
Right.
And and that's really what it comes down to, like, creation is an extension, I guess you could say, I don't know, again, this might be a poor way of saying it, but creation is kind of like an extension of God's creative action. And I think like Tolkien, for example, sees it that way. It's like when we are creative, we are like participating in God's act of creation. And like Tolkien famously sees heaven as like this endless creative, I don't know, this endless creation basically,
Yeah,
where we're all
particularly
like,
in Leaf by Niggle. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really he shows it definitely there. What's kind of a Lewis is further up and further in,
mhm,
going deeper and deeper into God.
yeah,
Sort of like Lewis will use this in the Great Divorce. You know, you're in the foothills of heaven. You're going into the mountains, and then there's just like deeper and deeper heaven.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
which is a
Um,
little bit of a contrast to how I grew up in the West, where you kind of view heaven as static and as achieving just like a state of being, and there is no kind of like movement. But you know,
yeah, and this kind of circles around to why it is that I think we say that beauty and truth are kind of the same thing, because what beauty ultimately is that which truly participates in the divine, truly participates in God, in Christ. And if we understand also that truth is a person, truth is the person of Christ Jesus, that's our Orthodox theology. Truth isn't like an abstract collection of precepts and statements, but truth is a person. It's a personal force. It is Christ. Then you can understand why it is that I say truth and beauty are the same thing, because they're pointing to the same reality and they're participating in the same reality. They're just different ways of stating the same point.
I think that's such a good point, David, because I'll give you a quick example. When I go to a home of like a devout Orthodox family, and you see what like the priorities are within just how the home is arranged.
Mhm.
I can think of one home in particular. We're very good friends, and you can't find their TV. It's like, where's the TV here? Right? I mean, most American homes are like centered around bigger and bigger TVs, right? Which is where most lies are pumped out in our world. It's not. It's like watching the TV is the opposite of prayer. Well, in this home, you can tell what really matters. You can see their prayer books. You can see the icons,
Mhm.
bookshelves filled with holy books. You can see the dining room table is humongous because it has to be big enough, not just for their family, and they're a family of 7. They also have to have a big table for guests, right? So the dining room table, which is kind of almost altar, if you will, of the home, where people gather, they pray, they feast. The father is kind of the priest of the home, leading. Uh, and then there's other priorities of the home that flow outward.
Mhm.
There's a farm, there's animals. Not saying everyone can have a farm, but this particular home does. But you can kind of see, despite I'm sure their imperfections and their sins, you can see the priorities rising up even just from how their home flows out and is
Yeah.
designed.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, that's a conversation that me and my, soon to be wife, we've had. It's like, I don't want a TV to be like the focal point of any room in the house. Um, it's fine. I don't have a TV right now, but, it's fine to have one, but, like, it shouldn't be in the center where all the furniture is facing. Like uh, we shouldn't design our I don't know, design our living space around being entertained and consuming. And
Yeah.
for so many people, like, you walk into their house and the most prominent thing is the TV. I've heard people like Jonathan Peugeot talk about this point. And I think he and I have the same sensibility, if if I recall that. It's like it's jarring and it's unsettling, and we've kind of become numb to it because it's so normal in America. But you go outside of America and you don't find that. But we have such a, I don't know, such a consumerist oriented culture,
Yeah.
and we think, like, the highest good is to have our passions satisfied, basically. And like, it's atrocious. It's just horrible, and it disorders us. It disorders our souls. And so it disorders our whole life and the world around us. And like, you're very right. If we pattern our living space around something else, like around the icons, currently my living room, the focal point is, like, this isn't my living room behind me, but I have another set of icons that's kind of like the focal point of that room. And I feel like that's, it should be something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be icons, but something good should be what you are. You pattern your life, pattern your living space, pattern your architecture, pattern your art around something good, and it will shape you as a person.
Yeah, there's an actual like theology of the home. Um, and I think, a lot of people may never step into an Orthodox church, but they might your neighbors might step into your front porch or they might step into your home and they might quickly recognize if that this is kind of like a different kind of beauty than they've encountered. Oh, this is a
Hmm.
place of prayer. It might feel weird to them at first, right? Kind of odd, weird, but when you put it as a priority, I think they're gonna quickly see the warmth, the priorities, the hierarchy that's going on in your own home. By the way, we have a lot of work to do. Like, it's very easy to talk about this on a podcast
Yeah.
about what you want to happen or you see other people doing it. We're not, I mean, to be honest, to be transparent with you guys, like the King family, we're not there. Like, we have a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
We've made progress, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we've all kind of we've. I mean, I'm a little bit, I guess I could say, exempted from some of these things, having grown up in a Mennonite world, which is like very deliberately patterned around their faith. And that's a good thing. That's something I really, really appreciate about my upbringing. But that doesn't mean I'm completely exempt from the problems that we're talking about. Because I would say, if you don't have the Orthodox Church, then you do wind up, if you don't have the church that Christ established, if you don't have the grace of the Holy Spirit operating in his church, if you're not, united with the body of Christ in this way, then you can try your best, but you're never actually going to be able to accomplish these things. You can't like will your way into heaven, I guess.
So there's a really good point that you just brought up, and I'm so glad you did because I this is like a loose thought that I wanted to always bring up with you. So I was on a trip down to Virginia and I swung by this place. I think it's in Maryland, and it's like this historic Mennonite home. And
Hmm.
I'm like, my friend David, like he grew up Mennonite. And here's the thing, in this traditional Mennonite home, they had a prayer corner
Yeah.
where like significant things happened. Like, they had their holy books, the Book of the Martyrs. It's
Yeah.
got a name. You probably know the name, right?
Yeah. The martyr's mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've got the Martyr's Mirror there. They have a table with a bookshelf with the like the Bible, holy books, all that. And I didn't realize this, but like significant events happened in this prayer corner in the home. Like marriages happened and like
Yeah.
sacraments, like, ritual happened in this corner of the home. And I'm like, wow, this is old world Mennonite understanding that seems very close to the Orthodox mindset.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would say that is largely a pattern that is, for most people, it's irrelevant. It's dead. Most Anabaptists. I don't want to get too far into this. It's a completely different conversation. But most Anabaptist people have been kind of absorbed into the like the evangelical and even pseudo charismatic world.
Hmm.
kind of taken over, and so, like, having this this tangible physical place has kind of been, allowed to out fall out of the pattern of life. But that's relevant to what we're talking about, because there you see this happening, um, and you can step back and see, like, there's real consequences for that, and one of the consequences for that being these communities just shattering.
Right. So you've got like traditional communities that were countercultural, but then when they slowly let, the patterns of the world,
Mhm.
which are kind of different than the patterns of reality or the patterns of heaven,
Right.
things can change pretty quickly. I should
Yeah.
also ask you, there was like an icon. I don't know if you know anything about this. There was like a metal icon in the fireplace. So there was this massive fireplace where they did all the cooking, and there was a metal, like a, I don't know if I should call it an icon, but you know what I mean. Like, uh, it was totally designed like what you might see of an icon in the Gospels in this fireplace at this Mennonite house. Do you know what that is?
I'd have to see a picture of it to know exactly
Okay.
what you're talking about, but what I would say, just, like, real briefly, and maybe this is something that will, like, throw up some questions for people that would make some fun future content, but, either on, us together, or over on my channel.
Yeah.
Um, but, like, I don't think I've studied this, and I've tried to find out the relationship between iconoclasm and the Swiss Anabaptists specifically, because that's my background. And the best conclusion I can come to is that the Swiss Anabaptists were never intentionally iconoclastic. The Dutch were. Um, but, like, the Swiss Reformation more broadly is, obviously, like, Zwingli is extremely iconoclastic. John Calvin is extremely iconoclastic. When the reformers take over in the city of Bern, they, like, what they do is they tear down all the statues and smash them to dust, and tear out the organs and melt the pipes down and cast them into forks and spoons and give them to the poor, because, like, they're trying to show how much more virtuous they are than those papists. Um, so, like, that's the character of the Swiss Reformation, but I think, like, the Swiss Anabaptists just kind of, um, didn't really ever have that sensibility, and didn't appreciate everything that their Protestant neighbors were doing, but, kind of absorbed iconoclastic sensibilities, like, through osmosis over the centuries, and then, like, fundamentalism really takes over the conservative Anabaptist mind coming into the early part of the 20th century, and I think that kind of reshapes and redefines things. But yeah, you're definitely right. If you look at older snapshots of things, you see things more like what you're describing there.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, you came from a background that didn't really have icons.
Right.
So, how did you develop like a theology? Not saying that you like were self-constructing. I mean, we're the interview is like saying the opposite of this. Like, how did you discover the beauty of the universe and these patterns that you might see in creation? The Old Testament temple, Orthodox temples. How did you move along this trajectory? Because other people, they might be farther behind where you are now. Like they're doing the
Yeah.
same journey.
So part of it comes from being a student of church history. So I'm just going to throw this out. I saw it looked like Alex Soren was in the
My
chat.
buddy Alex has joined us. Yep.
Yeah, so he'll appreciate this when I say that, from a historical perspective, like, it seemed pretty obvious to me early on that iconoclasm was a novelty when it happened, in the Byzantine Empire. Like, it was a complete novelty and has no historical basis. And, so that seemed pretty obvious for me. I'm not going to go. That's like a whole other video. But also just looking at the arguments of the iconoclasts and comparing them to the arguments of the Orthodox arguments. It's like the iconoclast arguments are terrible. Like, they're just bad philosophy, and they're bad theology. And so it was, I don't know, after encountering that, I'd say it was actually pretty easy for me to accept icons. I would say, like, I never grew up strictly aniconic or iconoclastic. Um, So, like, I don't feel like I ever had this sensibility that having a depiction of Jesus is idolatry or something like that. I know some people I was around did have that sensibility, but I only just thought like, "Oh, this is just like a weird Protestant idea, and it doesn't make sense to me." Um,
Yeah, I didn't even know that it existed. I grew up Baptist, pretty ignorant of church history, but it wasn't until I had this youth ministry trip with a Presbyterian, and he was telling me that I shouldn't watch the movie Passion of the Christ because it depicts the image of Jesus, like, in film,
yep.
and I was like, I had never even had, like, that thought never even, like, crossed my mind. So
Yeah,
I
and I
was
guess
like, "Oh, that's interesting."
I was always kind of frustrated with arguments like that.
Hey, Cleve. Hey, Ben.
Hey,
Thanks
it's
for
good to
joining
see you
us.
there, Ben. Um, hey, Journey of Abundance, that's my cousin Zach. It's good to
Hey,
see you
Zach.
in the chat too.
Hoosier Orthodoxy. We're representing Indiana today,
Yeah,
so we're both
there
from
we go.
Indiana. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say so it's not something I ever had a huge struggle with. And it was fairly easy for me once I actually read the defense of the holy icons and things like that. It's like, oh, you know what? This is actually consistent with the Bible, and in a way that iconoclastic arguments like really introduce some dilemmas. They introduce some pretty serious dilemmas, and so I think that was one thing for me um, that was one thing for me that encountering these things, accepting the orthodox position, I don't know, it generates a lot less anxiety than holding to the iconoclastic position because I'm also just like really dissatisfied with a reduction of Christianity to a bunch of rules that you have to follow. Because like I'm always of the opinion, and I discovering like this is like the patristic consensus, and this is the Orthodox position as well, is that we don't have rules for rules' sake, and that you can always look at the precepts of God and understand what God is teaching you through these precepts. And like I loved encountering that when reading the church fathers. It's like, oh, God isn't just arbitrarily establishing rules, rather, he's trying to show to us the way the world is, the way reality functions. And we can like there's two really opposing ways I can understand the second commandment as as Protestants number the commandments anyway. Um that I can understand it as, being this strict prohibition of images, period. Or I can understand it the way it interacts with the story as it unfolds in the history of Israel and the history of the church as teaching us something, like actually teaching us something, I should say. And that's really what it turns out to be is we see the way the second commandment, the prohibition against images, if you take it on its face value anyway, how it interplays with the rest of the story in the Old Testament, then we understand like, oh, God is actually teaching us something more significant than saying, oh, you just can't have any images. And if you have any images, I'm going to be mad. For one thing, I don't think that's how God works. It's like, oh, if you break my rules, I'm going to be mad at you. It's like, no, if you defy the way things actually are, it's going to have consequences for you. Um,
Leads to self-collapse.
yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to bring out more than anything is just understanding this idea that um, this really, really strict iconoclastic position is one, I don't know, I think the best way to put it is just like it's one that turns you into an insufferable and miserable person because you're just obsessed with rules and
Mhm.
you're constantly having this anxiety. This is something that was very real to me coming from a Mennonite position is like you constantly have this anxiety about whether or not you're breaking the rules and sinning. And um yeah, like that's such a dissatisfying way to live. So it's like adopting the orthodox position on icons is something that allows reality to teach me,
Yeah.
allows God like I begin to recognize that God acts through his creation, and he's not like sitting in some distant heaven that we're hoping that we can aspire to.
Well, when you don't have sacraments and icons and you don't venerate relics, and the universe can feel very cold Like you're
Mhm.
like, well, Christ is warm and everything else is like cold. And it's very difficult to like integrate, okay, well, what does Christ have to do with the universe? Like he made the creation, like what he made the church, like he instituted worship. What does this have? How does this all fit together? And I actually think that orthodoxy gives the best answer to that.
Yeah, and that's a good point, is that in Orthodoxy, the whole world cooperates together for our salvation. Like, at least the parts of it that have been redeemed. And that, I mean, that's an important point too, is like in Orthodoxy, things can be redeemed. And that's something that's like so um
Sorry, I
I
didn't mean to distract you with the
no,
comment.
sorry, I just want to address that real quick. It's
I
like it's
didn't want to miss it. Yeah.
good to see another fellow Mennonite, and praise God for your baptism. I have another friend who was Amish that's going to be baptized soon as well. It's good to see that happening, and that's something we want to do more over on the Sacred Life. Actually, is kind of address some of these specifically Mennonite and Anabaptist things a little bit sometime as well. But anyway, getting back into what I was saying,
Yeah.
just that in Orthodoxy, there is this idea that reality, that things in our world can be redeemed, can be restored to their essential goodness. And that's just such a more beautiful way of interacting with the world, with interacting with Christianity, just in contrast to like this dispensational view that sees the world as essentially evil and something that we are striving to escape from. And it's like I find like this idea that John Calvin has, for example, in his Psychopanachia. I always quote this to point to why I don't like Calvin. It's like he says like the body is like this prison for the soul that we are going to escape from. It's just like that's just such an ugly world that arises as a consequence of that way of thinking.
Hmm.
And so ultimately, like that's why I embrace icons and even embrace iconography. Like for one thing, it's something I can do with the gifts and the talents that God has given me. It's something I can do to bring beauty into the world to serve these things that I'm passionate and care about. When there was just no way for me to do that in outside of the Orthodox world. I should say, because like it's not just something that there was no way for me to do this in the Mennonite world. It's just like even looking at alternatives, leaving the Mennonite world, it's like Orthodoxy is the only place for this, the only place where I can do this. Um,
Right. That's true.
but which I mean, for one, for like for me, is like a huge argument as to why Orthodoxy must be the one that is true. Um,
It's like actually kind
uh,
of using a beauty truth argument in a
yeah,
way.
and I'll just like let that linger and let people meditate on that rather than explain it. But But, let's see, what was I saying? Just embracing these things.
Oh yeah, we got Alex back saying that he's
Yep.
met a former Mennonite who's become Orthodox and is paying Orthodox vespers.
Yeah, I
Nice.
really hope the Mennonite to Orthodoxy pipeline can be confirmed. There's a lot about Orthodoxy that can appeal to that. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by that, but it's something I'm obviously passionate about because, like, I view my Orthodoxy as the fulfillment of what my Mennonite ancestors were seeking. And I think, you know, God willing, I hope to, hopefully me and Father Jonathan at Transfigured Life are going to be doing some collaborating on this subject in the near future. Um, but anyway, I keep getting distracted. You guys are horrible. You're getting me.
This is why people turn off the chat during during interviews so that we don't get distracted.
No, that's fine. I love those comments as well.
I have to
Um,
joke because I was interviewing Father Stephen DeYoung live, and Father Andrew Damick was jumping in, and I kept getting distracted about all the comments, and I was like,
yeah.
"Wait, where are we in the interview?" So you're supposed to turn off the comments during an
Yeah,
interview.
now I've actually forgot the whole point I was trying to make, after this whole,
So you
like,
become an
thing.
iconographer because you didn't really have that in your tradition, and it's basically all integrated. It's all
Yeah.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I was getting at was just this idea that that is the beauty of orthodoxy, is it is a holistic worldview where everything works together. And I was contrasting this idea of like the essential evil, like this almost, I don't know, it's not really Gnosticism. I think it's just like Platonic metaphysics that have crept in to the Protestant mind. Um, which is the same source as what those bad ideas in Gnosticism are. But I just think it's inaccurate to say this is Gnostic. That's just
Yeah.
picking a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Alex does 6 hour live streams because of all these comments. I told Father Stephen DeYoung, I'm like, "I'm not doing a 5 hour, 6 hour Alex Soren stream."
yeah,
With it.
I did a 4-hour live stream once, and it was fun, but I wouldn't wanna do that every day. I couldn't do that every day. I have I've got icons to paint. Come on,
That's
guys.
right. That's
Um,
right.
but, no, but that is just the beauty of orthodoxy, this holistic worldview, this idea that we can take things in the world. Because if I can take things in the world and redeem them to their essential goodness, that means I can be redeemed to my essential goodness, which again is like this theology that I found so beautiful in Saint Irenaeus is like looking at what Christ is doing is recapitulating our humanity. And I find in that something so hopeful, something
Right.
beautiful, something so good. It's like, man, if that's what Christianity is actually all about, like I want that.
I mean, the
I,
quote by Saint Irenaeus, and it's one of my favorite quotes, is, "The glory of God is man fully alive."
yeah, right.
So, it's like
Exactly.
one of the most profound lines, and you gotta, like, sit on that line for a bit and
Yeah, and
let it
that's like
sink
the
in.
beauty and the glory of orthodoxy is man fully alive. Because I mean,
That's right.
if orthodoxy is the body of Christ, then of course the glory of God is also the glory of orthodoxy.
So to move people along, it's like, if they read the commandments, God forbidding graven images, and then the next line he's saying, "Hey, make these images of, angels on the Ark of the Covenant and put these angels and images within the temple." He's obviously not against images because
Yeah,
they're literally being
you have to have a
thrown
way
in the temple.
of reading the Bible that doesn't set it at odds with itself.
Right. That's why narrative theology is important.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we were gonna talk about that and did for a little bit.
It's true.
So
Well, I like moving this along because this relates to the beauty, but also the truth, because people can also they're like, well, the angels are only there for like didactic purposes. Like they're beautiful decorations. They're only there for teaching, but they have no role in the sense of like our prayer life. And I'm like, that's not how they thought of the temple. Like
but
the
that's also
temple
just
was an
not how
icon.
that's not how reality works. That's
Right.
not a real argument.
If
Like,
creation, yeah,
that's an argument that only works in your head.
it is if you have a certain way of looking at the universe. But once you make some tweaks or overhauls, depending on where you're starting from, if creation is a temple, if the temple is like, the Old Testament temple is a temple within a temple, and this is all involved in our prayer life, our ritual life, our liturgical life. This is more than decoration. It's more than a teaching icon, like, right? Like telling you what something is. It's also caught up into our world of prayer. So if we're actually petitioning a saint and we're looking at the image of the saint, like they did in the catacombs, by the way, in the early church, it's being caught up into the world of prayer, and we know that that's how they treated the temple of the Old Testament. They
Mhm.
venerated the temple. Like, they viewed it as an icon of God in which they prayed, and even, there's been some good Old Testament, scholars who have talked about how even the furnishings, which, by the way, would include the curtains with the images and the Ark of the Covenant with the images and all the items, they were viewed as an icon of God in which you prayed through. So
Yeah.
even the whole, like, our doctrine of, within Orthodoxy is found in the Old Testament if you
Mhm.
actually do a little bit of deeper study.
Yeah. Um, but even like my biggest critique of that idea, like the angels or the images in early churches are just didactic and like they're not something used in the way Orthodox use them. But the question I have for that is when you're operating in the real world, how is that actually a different thing? Like, what does it mean that something is didactic and not used in some kind
Interactively, like,
of
interactively.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because it ends up not actually meaning anything. Like, again, that's what I meant is, like, that's not a real argument. That's not an argument that operates in reality. That's an argument that only works if you're operating in your head in the realm of abstract ideas, which is always a bad idea. Like, you always have to like, I'm a realist, as is Orthodox theology. Orthodox philosophy is realist. Um, and like your argument has to be grounded first and foremost from like in reality. It has to operate from reality. And so like sitting back and speculating, like I'm a big fan of this idea from Saint Gregory of Palamas, who is my patron saint, in the triads, where he criticizes this idea of like syllogistic reasoning pretty extensively, because it's like you can create artificial constructs in your mind when you're operating this way. And like this didactic argument is like it's that kind of reasoning that's just abstract and divorced from anything that's real, anything that actually exists. And what that means practically is if you're interacting with icons in such a way as they are teaching you something, that is a prayerful act.
Mhm.
That's not essentially different from what we as Orthodox are doing.
Yeah, somebody asked the question, "What is narrative theology?" I've probably already used this phrase several times in the stream. I kind of like contrast it with systematic theology a little bit, like how like the West can sometimes do theology. Um, for example, like when I would talk to Mormons, this is when I was really kind of diving into church history a little bit. They were trying to tell me this whole narrative, like this whole story that happened. So, I mean, you can argue with a Mormon and be like, well, here's my 10 propositions. Here's your 10 propositions. Who wins? Well, it's
Mhm.
like, well, we're operating from a different paradigm already. And so then I have to engage them from a story standpoint, like a narrative. And they're trying to tell me that the church went wild after the Apostle John died. They're trying to tell me a couple different things. They're saying the fathers went haywire, which I have a very hard time saying anything dishonorable towards Saint Ignatius of Antioch, who I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And then also they're trying to tell me that in the Old Testament they've got these extra books that they like that Joseph Smith discovered, and all these guys like left Israel and made it to like America. So am I gonna how do I move this Mormon person along? Do I move them by arguing against like here's my 10 points versus your 10 points? Or do I help them become more convinced of the narrative that's arising up through the fathers? Because it's like the most truthful, the most authentic, the most beautiful, the most
Yep.
good.
Well, and it's like what I say in response to people who want to say something like the great apostasy, any kind of restorationist ideal, whether it be Mormon or Church of Christ, or really like a lot of modern evangelicals or evangelical aligned people, they don't have a restorationist idea necessarily, but they have very similar ideas of like the church falling into complete apostasy. So like I would have grown up hearing that the church was going along and it was good, and then Constantine shows up and like subverts everything
Mhm.
brings the church under Roman captivity, and that's the source of all error, and the true church like retreats into the wilderness. That's kind of how we would have believed. That's like the what has become the default Mennonite understanding of church history. But my response to that is, well, okay, let's look at these people that you're saying are apostate heretics, and let's look at how they lived their lives. Let's look at the sacrifices. So, like, the people that you're saying subverted the church, like, the first problem that arises for that is the church stood up to them and said they were wrong whenever they tried to subvert the church and suffered for that, and we recognize those men as saints.
Yeah,
Like, those are the men who stood for orthodoxy, and the emperors who tried to subvert the church, we say these were bad emperors, and God preserved the church from their meddling.
right. Like where
Um,
that's a
so that
great response because you're like, where are your guys? Like
Yeah,
we've got
right,
our
where
martyrs, we have our martyrs and our saints, and then we can identify all the heretics and the Roman Empire emperors killing us.
yeah,
Where are your people?
and, like, in contrast to that, the people that you're trying to say are heretics suffered and died for the faith very often.
Yeah.
Um,
I should also say this about narrative theology, because I gave an example from church history, right? Like the connection between, let's say, the end of scripture and the apostles to like the fathers. But you can also do narrative theology with all of scripture because so I grew up as a dispensationalist Baptist where we viewed the whole Bible like in different dispensations. And the problem is that kind of way of doing theology, even though you can try to make sense of it on your all your graphs, it destroys the story.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
destroys the story because Christ says he's the fulfillment of everything that came before. And so the old covenants are fulfilled in the new covenants. And this is why orthodoxy is just like so good at covenant theology and
Yeah.
typology, like which relates to icons, right? I mean, the beauty and the truth come together in an icon because an icon is packed with biblical typology. The temple still matters.
Yeah.
Like the way we worshiped in the Old Testament still matters. All these types still matter.
Well, so here's a good example of, I don't know, the importance of telling the right story. Well, I actually have two examples. First, I'll start with a bad example, which is one thing that's happened in the world that I came from, the Mennonite world, is we had a certain story of who we were as a people, where we came from. And then in the 20th century, we abandoned that story and replaced it with another one. And the consequences of that were dire. It reshaped the Anabaptist identity entirely, and it is why we became charismatic evangelicals, like, basically, because earlier our story of ourselves was that we were faithfully preserving the tradition of the apostles when everybody else in the West abandoned it. So, and they generally pointed to like the late Middle Ages is when this happened, and even the time of the Reformation. So you find this, for example, in the Swiss Anabaptist writers saying that, for example, they say like we didn't intend to start our own organizations. That was not our goal. But we found ourselves in a situation where there was no church because the Protestants just went and invented their own thing with no authority to have done this. And the papists is, which is what, that's the term they use, so that's why I'll use it here. But the papists, because the idea there being the people who are following the bishop of Rome, because there's important 15th century precedent for the use of that word. But anyway,
Yeah.
I
So
digress.
for clarification, Anabaptists, your tradition, they didn't really view themselves as Protestants, really.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they viewed themselves as like being left in a tough spot where the people who had the authority, the bishops of the church, had just like abandoned tradition, what we as Orthodox would identify as holy tradition.
Mhm.
I don't agree with all the conclusions they came to, but this was our story of ourselves. This is who we were, the people who were trying to be faithful to the tradition that was handed down from the apostle, the best that they could, in a world where nobody else cared about it. And then in the 20th century, we replaced that story with what our opponents had to say about us at the time of the Reformation, which is that we were the radicals who just pulled out all the stops and pushed for this idea of radical reformation, which that existed. And some of those people contributed to the Anabaptist identity as it emerged. But the important thing for what we're talking about here is that's not the story that we told about ourselves. That's not how we identified ourselves. And because, the story in this sense was more important than the forensic reality, because it shaped how we interacted with the Bible. It shaped how we interacted with the faith. It shaped how we interacted with the Christian world more broadly and with everything. But then when our story shifted to we're the radicals, we're the ones who, pushed the Reformation to its logical conclusions, then the entire Anabaptist world fell apart. It just shattered and split into a thousand pieces, because now what is virtuous in our minds isn't preserving the tradition of the fathers. It is being the most radical, being I don't know, being as thorough in reforming the church as possible. And like this idea that Gavin Ortland brings out about like this ongoing reformation, like this became our priority, is this constantly ongoing reformation and renewal of the faith. And that's just chaos. It doesn't work. And it destroys people, it destroys lives, it destroys communities. It's horrible. But so like that's a practical example of narrative theology at work. And then
Yeah.
another example, I don't know. You can say something, I guess, if you want to, if you have any comments before I get into the other example.
No, no, jump into your example so before I change the direction of the conversation.
Yeah, the other example is something I had, mentioned to you in some of our texts the other night, which is, we hear this thing from Roman Catholics all the time about all the East fell to the Arian heresy, and it was only Rome that stood. And it's like, well, part of the problem there is because we're doing a bad job of actually telling the story of the triumphant church in the East. Because
Right. Yeah.
we're kind of accepting their premise that, like, yeah, all the patriarchs were Arians, which isn't even exactly true. I mean, it kind of is, I guess, but even so, like, that doesn't matter. But instead, we can tell the story of the faithful Christian community persevering and enduring when the forces of the kingdom of Satan are trying to overthrow the church and failing to do so ultimately. That, like, this would just be a much better way instead of trying to engage in these apologetics and these polemics against Roman Catholicism. Like, why don't we just, and I'm actually working on this. That's kind of why I bring this up. I'm kind of working on a script for this at the moment. Um, like, why don't we just tell the story of what actually happened and present orthodoxy as triumphant and not something that had failed? Because that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I would highly recommend Dr. Cyril Jenkins' couple year podcast on church history through ancient faith, where he's just telling the story of church history. And what's great about his podcast is that like, a lot of people, I mean, this is the part that's not great. I wish more people were listening to it because this is like basically a free course on church history from an orthodox standpoint, and he's doing exactly what you just said. He's balancing out the picture. Like,
Yeah.
he's balancing out the picture of, like, church history, and you're not just hearing the Roman Catholic side, and then, uh, part of it's, like, Orthodoxy is smaller than a lot of the highly fundraised Catholic world, and so you tend to hear
Yeah.
the Catholic narrative, and so then Orthodox are just trying to respond to the Catholic narrative, but our infrastructure and our
Right.
organization isn't, like, there to fully just have, like, the means to just tell our version of the story without having to, like, respond.
Yeah, right. And what I'm saying, like, I'm sure this isn't true if you grew up in, like, let's say Russia or Greece or somewhere like that in an Orthodox culture where there's an Orthodox establishment. Like, you probably heard the story of the triumphant Orthodox Church. But for us, growing up Protestants in America, we heard a different story. And that's kind of shaped how we interacted with church history and shaped how we interacted with the Bible, with theology, with philosophy, with all these things. It really is shaped by the story that we heard, and I've experienced personally what's really effective in reaching my own people is correcting the story, correcting the record. Like, no, like, you were told this is what happened, but I'm going to challenge you to look into that a little more because that's not actually how it went down.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you think that the Pope was like extremely successful in shutting down Arianism in the West, it's like that's actually literally the opposite of what happened. I
Right.
mean, Arianism like became gigantic in the West, particularly in the North,
Yeah.
and then it was like what Charlemagne who took it out by the sword. It's so you got that whole story, and then eventually Protestantism takes over, where the previous Arianism lands were. So it's not even a thorough story if you're just saying the Pope saved the West while, the East were overrun by Arianism or something.
Yeah.
So, gotta be careful about those things.
Yeah, and the way I don't know the way we interact with our story, as Orthodox Christians, but also our story as individuals. We each have a story, and it's very important. And I would also just like encourage converts to Orthodoxy to interact with your story in such a way that is not to throw away everything that came before you and just like, I don't know, scrap it all and start over. That's not how the fathers interacted with pagan communities when they came in. It's like, oh, you got to throw everything away and start like a completely new Christian world from scratch. Like, no, like, we shouldn't do that.
Oh, I've
Um,
got a good example of that, David. There's an icon in the, sort of Nordic lands where you have the big wooden stave churches,
mhm.
and there's like, a tapestry icon of 3 figures walking away from Christ, but not in a negative way. and they've like left him gifts. A
Yeah.
lot of people thought that was like the three wise men, but scholars today think it's actually like Odin, Thor, and
Yeah.
the woman, the female goddess. I can't think of her
Um,
name. Uh, Goodness gracious, it slipped my
I should
mind. But
remember.
anyways, in this icon, the gods were walking away, saying that like the true God, the Most High, has come, and it was connected to like the Eucharist and the altar and Christian worship. And
Mhm.
so this icon itself was saying, in some sense, uh, even though they're three false gods, in some sense they were kind of like the mythology was a kind of preparation for Christianity, if you
Well,
will.
yeah, and, we're
Yeah, Freya,
familiar with
there you go. My
yeah,
goodness, yeah, I know Freya, I just couldn't think of it at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're familiar with things like, Greek philosophers, images of them being in, like, the narthex of Greek monasteries,
right.
scenes from Germanic mythology on the, like, the portals of the stave churches in Norway, things like that, like, those are examples of that. But it's like, your ancestors I've heard people like, I think, Father Andrew Stephen Damick has kind of encouraged people with the same thing. It's like, your ancestors did the best they could with what they had, and their legacy, if they were Christians, might be a part of why you are where you are now. And I know that's the case for me. Like the decisions that my father made and the decisions that my grandfather and great grandfather and great great grandfather made in terms of the faith play a very significant role in why I am Orthodox today. The things that my ancestors, my Anabaptist ancestors sought, the good in what they sought has led me to orthodoxy, and that's true, I think, for a lot of us. So, like, the way that we engage with those stories shouldn't be, "They were heretics, and they were wrong, and I need to distance myself from everything that they did," but rather we should tell our stories in such a way that we recognize the Holy Spirit having moved in all of it to lead us to where we are today.
Yeah. Somebody made a comment. What do we think of the Pope and the iconography for the triumph of Orthodox icons? I mean, my short answer to this is, I mean, if the saintly popes of the first millennium were alive today, they would recognize Orthodoxy as the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
And and I mean, I was actually just having this conversation with my son. You know, he grew up Roman Catholic. I raised him as a Catholic, and we transitioned into the Orthodox Catholic Church. And on a pre-sanctified liturgies are attributed to Saint Gregory. You know,
Yeah.
the great, the first, the Pope. And I described to him like, this liturgy lives within the Orthodox Church. This liturgy written by a Pope,
Yeah.
and we are totally comfortable with that because if Saint Gregory were alive today, not only would he recognize this liturgy, but also his ecclesiology, his understanding of the church. If you read his letters to John the Faster, the patriarch of Constantinople, if you read his ecclesiology, he's also describing quite an orthodox understanding of the church as well. So that was my short conversation that I had with my son. So that's my short answer.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good answer. There's more I could say, but
Yeah, we don't want to have a
too
whole
much
like
of a
stream about the
digression.
papacy. Yeah,
Yeah.
but in short, they are our saints. There's more that could be said.
Yeah, and it relates to, what we were talking about just now. It's like that's part of our story, and, that's something that for me has been good, is to be able to look back in the more ancient history of my people. Like, I have sorry, everything's up behind me here. You can't hardly see it because it's a dark icon in a dark room, but it's an icon of the saint from like the beginning of the second century who brought the gospel to my own ancestors. So this is a Western saint. It's a very obscure local saint. He is in the Synaxarion, like he's an Orthodox saint. Um, I can't remember what his feast name is, but he's Saint Beatus, like extremely obscure. Almost nobody outside. Like if you're not from where my family's from, you've never heard of this guy.
I only heard of him through you.
Yeah, right. But like I have it there because it's part of my story. And that's the case, I think, for almost all of us coming from the West, is somewhere in your story is the Orthodox faith.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I mean, this is why Deacon Sarah from Richard Rowland's doing a whole podcast on the Rood Screen, focusing on saints from old Ireland and old Britain,
Yeah.
because that's his ancestors, and he feels a connection to these people, and he just wants to tell their stories, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool project. I mean, I just did a stream with Father Stephen DeYoung about St. John Cassian. For me, he represents a lot for me. I'm not gonna. I mean, as an American, I'm sort of a mutt. Like, I'm a hodgepodge of many backgrounds and many places that you could point to in old Europe. But St. John Cassian, he really touches many points of not just the East, but also the West, where he's kind of bringing the Desert Fathers, and even being, after he's ordained a deacon by St. John Chrysostom, he goes to Rome, and he's kind of passing through all these lands. He kind of almost represents the pan-Orthodox world in a sense. Like, he
Mhm.
interacted with almost all the church fathers at this time period. But then he settles in France, southern France. But then many people are trained up in Gaul who end up in Ireland and bring, desert father monasticism to those lands. And so for me, he really represents my background, my story of being sort of, I feel like, a little hodgepodge, still kind of from the European West, but at the same time, where, at the same time, he represents that diversity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did find out that I have in my ancestry someone baptized in France. So that connects me to St. John Cassian. Lots of people jumping in with the comments. Fun stream. Thanks guys for joining us. We're talking about, why does beauty matter in the Orthodox Church? Um, and this is actually a good, David, we were going to bring this up, and I'm glad I just thought of it. But there was a church recently struck with a fire. They're doing a fundraiser. Let me pull this up here real quick and share it with you guys. I think people are being extremely generous. Many of you know it's Father Stephen Freeman's. He's the pastor of this church, St. John of the Latter Orthodox Church. They've raised $96,000. They're trying to get to 110, but one of the guys that I know, his godfather was the iconographer for this church, and he's still in the middle of it. Like, they're still, like, when I was looking at the lightning struck this, hit the dome, there are still sections that they were in the middle of doing. So sad.
Yeah.
Uh, but when we talk about beauty in the Orthodox Church, this is a great opportunity for people to contribute during Lent. Give to the poor, but also you can give to churches that are trying to bring beauty into their space. And this was one where, like, their beauty was hit by lightning. So
Yeah, and I know of a small rural parish that could really use some outside help in building a nice, in need of a nice, new beautiful space.
yeah, David. Well, get a link together with your parish, and we can.
Yeah, I'd have to actually have approval
Right.
from the priest and the deacon
Yeah.
before I do something like that. But
So there, people are giving really well to this. Actually want to share one more opportunity for you to give to an Orthodox parish that's in Indiana. We're both in Indiana. This is a new mission.
oh yeah,
Um, why is it not letting me do this? Something weird is happening. Stop. Okay. This is a new parish, Saint Barnabas of Indiana.
yeah, named for our Indiana saint.
Exactly. Killed by the communists, by the atheists
Yeah,
from northern Indiana. But anyways, we have a new mission in Muncie, Indiana, by a very large university. So this is a great opportunity to grow the church, and this church is growing very quickly. All they're asking for, let me try to zoom in a little bit for you. They're not even asking for a lot. They're asking for like $700, guys. Or no, they're asking for $5,000, but they just need like liturgical items. Like, this is like the basics that you need for an Orthodox church. This is an image of them at the theophany of the blessing of the waters. This is the first time this river in Muncie has been, blessed, and the liturgy of the blessing of the waters happened. And they're just trying to raise $5,000, guys, to have what they need to function as a worshiping community. So if you guys want to chip in, I'll put the links below. But again, this is St. Barnabas Orthodox Church in Indiana. They need two processional candles, two cherubim, seraphim processional fans, one processional cross, one stand to place the 5 appointments behind the holy altar table. So they're just trying to raise this money and this is a great opportunity, you know, to raise money for this wonderful
Yeah.
parish.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So let's try to take it from 700 bucks to 5,000 just with this stream, guys. Chip in 5, 10, 20, 100 bucks just so this again, this little parish is right next to a gigantic university. So this is like the biggest bang you get for your buck, right? All these 20 something year old students who are discovering orthodoxy, they need a parish. They need to be
Yeah.
able to see, they
Right.
need to participate in Orthodox worship. This is a huge opportunity to like to
Yeah,
do
I
this. We're
know.
not selling like junk here, guys. We're like trying this is almsgiving towards the church.
Yeah, I know my fiance goes to, her parish is All Saints in Bloomington, so that's near Indiana University, and my cousin Zach, he was in the chat, I don't know if he's still here, St. Alexis in Battleground, Indiana, which is just outside of Lafayette, so it's close to Purdue University, and I was just there earlier this week installing some iconography actually with Brian, just seeing the work that these universities or these parishes near the universities are able to do, like the hundreds of college students just in the state of Indiana coming into Orthodoxy because they have a beautiful parish nearby, and
Right.
they have what is it, the OCF, the Orthodox Christian Fellowship is at the college ministry.
Yeah, there's a little Orthodox like ministry there. Father Anthony, my
Yeah,
priest, is a part of it. I'll put the link in the stream for this, but they should have really had a mission. Like this city could have had a church, an Orthodox church, like decades ago. Um, but but this is how it works. Like whenever you can, you can. Um, uh, I'm not sure. Kyle GoFundMe is not bringing up the Muncie fundraiser using the title, so please. Okay, yeah, it's actually not through GoFundMe. It's
there you go.
through givesindo.com is for this parish. Yeah, I just
Gives
put the
and
link in the chat. And by the way, Ball State University, which is in Muncie, Indiana, is known for their architects. So think about it. Many of these guys become Orthodox Christians, and then the next moment they're helping to build Orthodox churches because they're architects. So maybe we can get Andrew Gould to kind of help out with this process of helping them learn Orthodox
Yeah,
architecture. Which I mean, the Orthodox temple is a kind of icon.
I like this, I like this idea of, the I if it weren't for if it weren't for what it means to be an architect in modern America, I probably would have pursued that as a career actually. But so much of it is just about, like, code compliance.
Right.
Most
You
of
run
being an
into a lot
architecture
of
is
that
just
kind of
is
stuff
just
for
code
sure.
compliance, which is just, like, so boring to me. And it creates a problem where you don't have people with a mind of beauty pursuing a career in architecture, and it's just something, it'd be great if there was, like, an ability for, people that are actually interested in designing beautiful buildings, and that's all they're really
Right.
interested in, to be able to work with people that, are more interested in the technical side and actually have the architectural license or whatever it might be. Um,
I should also say this little side comment. This connects to you, David, too, as well, because this isn't just connected to Ball State. It's also connected to an evangelical university called Taylor University.
yeah.
I went there. And by the way, when I was at Taylor, I visited all different kinds of churches because I
Mhm.
was very interested in the question of like, what did Christ intend for the church? And when I was there was no Orthodox church nearby. I couldn't, I would have to drive an hour plus to go there. So this church in Muncie is only 20 minutes down the road from Taylor. So you're not just pulling from, a typical large university, you're also pulling from a small evangelical university right up the road. And I may have become Orthodox 20 years ago, guys. I mean, I have no idea. I have no crystal
Yeah,
ball. But if I had had that experience of the liturgy and Orthodoxy 20 years ago, I may have been Orthodox
yeah.
because I was literally asking those questions as a theology student. And so that's also why this is really important to fund these kinds of
Well,
missions.
that's a thing too, and I don't know how much longer we want to go. I mean, I guess I'll go as long as you're willing to
Yeah,
go.
someone just gave $500 to
Yeah,
the St.
I
Barnabas.
saw that.
Yes.
That's
Praise
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 God.
be to God.
But that's something I'm also a big advocate for is beauty in the liturgy. Because that's something to me that has been hugely impactful coming into the Orthodox Church is the beauty of the liturgy. Um, and I'm not trying to be critical, like, please don't take this the wrong way. A lot of us, like, my parish included, we're a small parish with very limited resources. But it's just, I'd love to see, like and I know there is, but like a real push, a real strong push in us, in our local communities doing things to encourage making the liturgy as beautiful as we can. And also, like, coming up with solutions to that for parishes like mine, small parishes. Like, what can you do with your resources to make the liturgy as beautiful as possible? Thank God for things like St. Tikhon's Monastery that are working on things like that. Um, but we can do things in our local community as well, and that's
Well, there really is. I mean, Andrew Gold has talked about this quite a bit where
mhm,
how do you help mission parishes and small parishes that are struggling with resources? So, for example, he actually created an iconostasis that is portable and it's beautiful. And he's like, he gives it to a mission parish. And once they've built their own church, they're supposed to give it to the next mission parish.
yeah,
So what you're doing is, whether you're meeting in a strip mall or a gym or a house or a barn, like wherever your mission parish is beginning, who knows, right? Because you have literally no money.
yeah,
You now have beauty in the space.
yeah. I mean, you're doing all this fundraising for St. Barnabas. It's like I'm getting a little bit jealous here. Like St. Thomas Orthodox Church in Kokomo, Indiana, we really need a new church.
Okay, well, David, we can do a stream down the road. You just make your connections that you need to do, and then we'll go
Yeah,
from there.
yeah.
So that
I'm
would be
just,
a
I
lot of
mean, I'm
fun.
just throwing that out there,
Yeah,
just in case anybody's wondering.
yeah, it's true. I mean, think about how many mission parishes are popping up though, because a church that has capacity for 100 people, they now have 200 and they have no room. So they either have to build a church or start a mission.
Yeah, right.
Churches that seat 3 or 400 people have no room. I mean, even at St. George where I attend, can seat 4 or 500 people. The parking lot's filled. There's nowhere to sit. So every parish is running into this issue. So we need to be able to basically be in this place where as people come in and they have gifted resources, instead of giving money to like 5 different streaming services, right, Disney Plus, Netflix, Prime, your restaurants that you go to, there's ways to sacrifice in our own lives to like give to parishes.
Yep.
So this is a great opportunity. I didn't know we were going to be doing fundraising for mission parishes today, but
Hey, that was part of our agenda of pursuing a world of beauty. Because
right.
it's like I said at the beginning, talking about the small town, with if they build an Orthodox church there, it's something that, like, not only should we be striving to build more Orthodox churches, but we should be striving specifically to build beautiful Orthodox churches. And this is something I think the Romanian church in Europe has done very, very well at, is not only building Orthodox churches all over the place, but building like stunningly beautiful Orthodox churches. Like I've seen these
Even when
pictures.
they're small.
Yeah, like even if they're
Yeah.
if they're small, it's like I've seen these pictures of like these beautiful wooden churches in like Italy or something like that, like brand new churches that the Romanians built. I was like, we need that. I saw a comment on here. Somebody was like saying something. If I could find it, I guess I don't have the ability to put things up anyway, so it doesn't matter if I find it. But um, somebody's saying something about like, maybe we should have more parishes pooling together to build big, beautiful churches. And I think it's the opposite, actually. I think we should be building a bunch of small churches. I know the challenge with that is that we don't have priests to serve every community, but you had all these churches like in Constantinople, for example, that doesn't have a liturgy every week. Um, I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
It's not a bad idea, actually.
Mhm.
I do think, I mean, Dr. Timothy would be behind the beauty first approach.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
it's, when you give
That's a
them
good
the
way to put it.
cosmic pattern of reality,
Mhm.
people recognize that. So if you're, like, in a little town and you give them a taste of this little temple, this little cosmic taste of reality, right?
Right.
People jump in quicker, and even if your priest only comes once a month to visit, people are, like, hooked, and so these things can happen pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um
Well, it's like I've had the idea for a while that I live in the middle of nowhere in the country, but there's a very popular state campground like right around the corner. I think it's like 150,000 annual visitors or something like that. Like very popular, very active. It's a big campground.
Yeah, I need to visit that campground and then come and see it, David. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had this idea like for a long time. It's like, man, it'd be great to build a chapel, like a beautiful chapel on my property that people could like drive by and see this thing, and stop in and visit it and pray in it or whatever they want to do. Um, just saying, if somebody wants to, if somebody wants to pay for it, I'll do it.
Well, it's true, and I mean, these don't even have to be formal churches. They can also be shrines of relics, right? I mean, I don't know all the formalities behind starting something like that, but like you do see this in kind of the old world, right? You go to like these little chapels and you pray. There's
Yep.
icons and there's relics of our beloved saints.
Right.
So when America's filled up with that, I mean, it's going to be like this melting point where people are just going to like flood, you know.
Yep.
It's a beautiful thing. So that's why it matters for evangelization, but ultimately it matters for worship and being caught up into
Yep.
prayer, as we kind of talked about, like prayer is reception.
But like I'm working on eventually, God willing, taking over as choir director in our little parish. And I've kind of said relating to that, my goal as choir director for our liturgy would be I want people to come in to our parish and have the experience Saint Vladimir had when he walked into the Hagia Sophia. And just make the liturgy as beautiful as you can possibly make.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, the
come
pagans
up.
came in from Russia. They weren't Christian yet. They were pagans, and they came down to Constantinople, and they said, "This is basically like heaven on earth."
Yes, like we didn't know whether we were on heaven or on earth.
Yeah.
In heaven or on earth. Sorry, getting my words mixed up. But like I think, but I just say that to say I think that should be our goal as Orthodox Christians with our liturgies, and remember who the liturgy is for. It's not it's not for us. It's for God.
Hmm.
And so our priority should never be like what kind of music do I like singing the best or something like that. Um,
Well said. Well said. Well, David, we've been on for almost 2 hours. I know we probably need to wrap it up, but obviously beauty matters because, we're worshiping the beautiful one who established this beautiful universe.
yeah.
That's always grounded in truth and goodness and it's reality itself. So, guys, again, behind me, icons that David painted,
And behind me, icons that
icons that David painted. You're gonna find after the stream is ended. I'll put a link where you can buy icons from David. David can be commissioned for icons. The one behind me, he painted Saint Olga of Alaska for my goddaughter who was being baptized. Um, so he's available, and it's a. First of all, lastly, I should say, it's a joy to have you as a friend and a brother, and it's great to
yeah,
have you on the stream
likewise.
today.
Likewise.
All right, guys,
Um,
don't forget to share the stream. David, one last thing you want to say?
yeah, I enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed the comments. It was definitely worthwhile. I hope it can lead to more conversation, between us, but just kind of in general. Hope we can continue to interact with the broader Orthodox world on these things. It's something I think both you and I care about a lot, is fostering beauty in different ways, whether it be through, through visual arts, through iconography, architecture, storytelling, music, whatever it might be. Like all of it matters.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah, and just like Kyle said, I am and I ain't stumbling over my words. I am an iconographer. I am open for commissions, but starting to get more and more busy all the time because I make make icons, but then I also make panels for other iconographers. And between those, I'm staying fairly busy and also working with Brian on his projects. But would you know, love to continue to grow as an iconographer. Would count it a privilege to have the opportunity to do some work for some of you all. Um, yeah, like Kyle said, he'll share the links for all of that. definitely, if you're gonna buy stuff, I have like some prints and stuff available on my website. Make sure if you're gonna buy that, buy it through the links that Kyle Cassian. I always call him Kyle, but I guess either one.
Whatever
Buy
you want to
the
call
link
me is fine. Just
that
hey you,
order
whatever
a
is
lot. It helps him feed his family to do that. So
fine.
if I can help my
my
brother out,
my
would love that.
7 halflings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we
Oh,
just lost your camera.
we just
So
lost me. Well, we'll go ahead and close it out. David, great to have you on the stream. We'll see you
yeah.
next time. Bye-bye.